Okay, everyone, welcome back to the show.
Yeah.
Special guest today, Tyler White. Thanks for coming out to join us.
Thank
this
you.
was a idea we started talking about. In winter, we wanted to actually bring you some proper winter content. One of the things that we want to start getting into is doing some survival-oriented content. Me and Chris, knowing how to survive merely the asphalt of a city.
Yep.
are not
Yeah,
gonna be
Phoenix
the best.
specifically, where it snows a lot.
Which means surviving
Fridays.
cartels.
Yeah,
and,
that's another
and various
thing.
things.
Snows.
But so we're gonna bring you a 4-part winter survival series. We'll start queuing that up here in just a sec. Real quick, to keep the lights on, if you guys need real estate help, let us know. Chris, Arizona, I'm Utah. I got people all over the place. Let us know on that. Patreon linked below if you guys are feeling generous, and then we've got a couple other links for, you know, ammo, slings, all that kind of stuff down below. To start jumping into it, why don't you kind of give us a snapshot of background? You collab for some other channels.
I do.
So
So
chat a little on that.
I run TJack Survival, TJACK space survival is my YouTube, my Facebook, Instagram, that fun stuff. I make content for Survivalopedia with an O, and I make content for Survival Dispatch. I've made a ton of collabs. Blade HQ, Ready Man, Lone Survivalist. There's a ton in my head, but I've kind of just skipped across a lot of different platforms and primarily survival, military related stuff.
Yep,
Cool.
A lot of primitive. Primitive is kind of in
Yeah,
your wheelhouse.
primitive is kind of, it's part of everyone's ancestry, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has someone in their ancestral line that flint napped and killed stuff with atlatls and whatever. So it's really something I think that people resonate with, and nobody knows it,
Yeah.
right? So it's something I'm super interested in. I dig deep to find people, to find skills, because it's the fallback, right? If we take away all this kit, the only answer is primitive.
Yeah.
That's the only solution.
Yeah.
Well, and it was that way for, well, until 100 years ago.
Yeah, not
Right?
even,
I mean, realistically.
Yeah, even mid 1800s.
Yeah.
They were still using flint and steel. Flint and steel's, and not ferro rod and steel, but actual
Flint
piece of
and
steel.
steel. Yeah.
That was like modern day technology, not back in my grandma's
Yeah.
age. You know, not very far back.
When you put it in that context, it's pretty shocking, just like the leap forward in just a very short amount of time.
My grandma was born in 1925. She knew people from the mid 1800s and people that lived on the plains indigenously. Like that's one generation back. We've already lost all that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a pretty thick military martial arts background, but the thing that I'm interested the most in and I do the most in is survival related. I love the kit, but I think that you should learn how to do it without it. So I seek after how do you do it without it. I try to go out without it, but I still bring it.
Well, it
right?
seems like
It's
fundamentals for firearms, right?
Yeah.
You start small and work your way up. It's very similar, I guess, if you want to compare
Yeah,
it
kind
that
of
way.
like firearms versus archery.
Yeah, there you go.
It's the same
Smarter than me.
trajectory, same holdover, same.
Yeah.
You know, instead of 1,000 meters, it's 300 meters.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, so let's do this. So on part 1, because I'll have no issue admitting it, I love knowing about gear and kit and all that kind of stuff. So we figure we kind of hit people with a little bit of like, let's give you a little bit of that red meat on this series.
Yeah.
So kind of walk us through, okay, wintertime, you're going in the woods, whether you're planning to go survive or not is I guess debatable, but like, hey, you're heading out, what's kind of a baseline level of stuff? And I would be curious both from an apparel perspective, because I think that probably plays a critical role, to, okay, obviously we got, funny enough, we're like Hill People Gear twinsies
it works.
today.
Use it, you know.
To, I'd love to know what's in there, what do you carry in your pack, like kind of what's that baseline level of stuff you got?
Okay. So everywhere you go, survival's the same thing, right? The questions are the same, the answers are different, because the environments are different, but they're really kind of the same. I know that sounded confusing, but I'll Barney this right now. So survivals don't die, right? So the next logical question is, what's going to kill me first? Cold.
Yeah,
right.
elements,
That's
yeah.
so
exposure.
Well, then what do I do to prepare against that? And then you just keep running down that rabbit hole until you can answer all the questions. It's always going to be fire, water, shelter, food, communications, medical, and signal of some sort. That's it in every environment, right?
Say those again one more time. We'll flash them on the screen too.
Fire, water, shelter, food, medical, signal, and the ability to replenish all of those.
Okay.
Right? So fire includes your metabolic fire. Shelter, right, is also out of order because it's not necessarily in that order. Those are just the things that you need.
Just the concept, yeah.
Yeah, so fire is heat, fire is cooking, fire is water purification. And actual fire is probably one of the most important things in all environments. Even in the jungle, we needed the fire to dry things out and cook food and eat animals without parasites. Out here, you need it to not die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So fire, also including what's in your body, kind of morphs into shelter. Shelter starts with what you brought with you, right? The reality is if you bring the right clothes, you don't need a fire. You want it, but you don't need it. The problem is most people don't bring enough.
Okay.
So when it comes to shelter and what you've got, the one key bones takeaway is if you can sit at 2 o'clock in the morning on this log comfortably without dying, you have enough. We don't right now, okay? And most people don't. So
I don't know. I wouldn't ever, I think. I'm not that tough.
Well, if that's the problem is we don't bring that. So you have to do something to account for that failure.
Yeah.
And it's always going to be fire, right? Unless you get into an environment where there's sand dunes, right? There are environments in northern Asia where it's so cold that there's snow, but there's sand dunes. You're not going to make a fire. Where are you going to burn? You've got to bring fire with you. You've got to bring shelter with you. There are some things, like even from a primitive perspective, there's places primitive people didn't live because you can't, right?
Yeah.
So you have to prepare in advance a little bit at a minimum wherever you go. It's always got to go that way.
Okay.
So if we talk about clothes, right? Base layer is something that wicks. Human sweat, that's what makes us different from other animals. We're phenomenal in our ability to manage heat. That's great for the desert. That's horrible for an environment like this. Because when we sweat, we're pushing that heat off, but now we become a little too effective at cooling ourselves off, and we're wet, and now we're in trouble. When it gets darker, 2 o'clock in the morning, we're dead, right? So the base layer needs to wick. It can be cotton, and people are going to yell at me, but I'll explain why. And it can be wool, and it can be synthetic. Cotton has this attribute that is called capillary transfer, and it takes water from one point and moves it to another point. So if you're wearing Levi's and you're in Georgia and you walk through water and you get out of the water, within a few hours your knees are wet because the capillary transfer pushes that. That's good to cool you off. That's great in the desert. That's bad here.
Sure.
But if your next layer is wool or something else, and depending on what kind of winter, because really there's sloppy wet winter and there's dry winter. We're standing in dry winter. Everything is covered with hoarfrost. This is as warm as it's going to get in the next 24 hours, right? So if your next layer is wool, wool can handle a little bit of a load of wetness without making you too cold, and it can push it out as well. The problem that we run into is a lot of people wear the Weekend Warrior stuff, which is good. I did the same when I was a mountaineering guide, but then it gets to that Gore-Tex layer and it's not coming out, right? You got to have those armpit fart holes.
Zips,
you got to have the vents, right? I've even gone so far as to having vents in the side of my pants because you got to let that humidity out.
That's cool.
Right? If you don't let that humidity out.
So that's your actual pair of pants.
Yep. These are just True Spec Expedition with an X. A friend of mine designed them. They work great. I used them in Afghanistan for 17 and 18. Can't say nothing bad about them at all.
Cool.
So it farts out that perspiration, right?
Okay, nice.
So there's two paths we can take. One is synthetic, one is natural material. If it's below zero, consistently below zero, super cold, I'm always going to lean towards natural material. It's going to be wool with cotton on the outside. That doesn't sound right, but if you see up northern Canada where it gets consistently 30 below, the wool is going to pull the load out of the perspiration, and after about 7 days, you're going to have to use fire to drain it out because it's going to get heavy. And then that external cotton layer, like canvas, is going to capillary transfer to the outside where it's freezing, and it's going to manifest like frost.
Water droplets, right?
Yeah.
I've
well,
seen
it's not water. It's going to be frost because it's freezing.
Yeah.
Right? So you're basically wearing a tent. So that big, huge outer layer, like the fall raven jacket I brought up, it'll manifest in frost, and you just brush that sweat off.
Okay.
But even in that environment, you're gonna, after about 7 days-ish, you're going to have to get a fire and dry your clothes off. You can't do that with Gore-Tex.
Sure.
You can, but you can't really do it with synthetic either. One little spark and you got a molten donut. Which is a hole. It's no longer waterproof.
Sure.
Now, if we go to the wet environment where it's not dry hoarfrost, you have to use Gore-Tex, right? Because it's wet and you got to protect. Like the reason I'm wearing this is on Gore-Tex on the bottom and wool and cotton on the top is because I need to perspirate, but I also need to keep my legs and body from getting wet. You got to stay dry. Super important.
Sure.
Right?
Okay.
So wicking layers on the base, wool in the middle. It's not about layers, it's about centimeters. Everyone says wear layers. What they really mean is wear centimeters. My one big wool sweater here, I guarantee you this one wool sweater,
so comfy.
God,
that's warmer than 7 t-shirts, right?
That looks comfy as hell.
So it's not about layers. so much is it about t-shirts.
Yeah.
The value of layers is you can take them off and cool off.
Sure.
Right? So I can sweat into this, not that I want to, but I can sweat into this and then I can wear it until it's dry. To include by a fire, because if an ember hits, I just brush it off. Right? And you can hold it by the fire, and you can watch the steam come off and just rub your hand against it, and you essentially washed it clean, right?
Yeah.
Another thing people don't mention is the smell, okay? 3 days deep with synthetic clothes, you're gonna stink. You're gonna speak, it's horrific. Some synthetic clothes can handle antimicrobial properties and not get stinky. Those early North Face shirts that we had, day 2, and I was like, oh, who died in my shirt? It was horrific. Wool, because it's lanolin and it's antimicrobial and it's basically just like little curly cues of hair, nothing grows on it, right? So if your wool stinks, it's because it's got yeast and bacteria on it from you. Just kill it with smoke and you smell it and it will smell fresh. And it's like a bath, right? Dirt isn't dirty, bacteria and yeast is dirty. So you have to deal with the bacteria and yeast that grow in your armpit and groin, especially after you've been here for multiple days. People that just go out for a day or two and they never have enough time in the backcountry to figure out how bad that is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
interesting.
That was a big vomit of information.
Yeah.
So base layer is wicking.
Yep.
Wool, cotton's okay. Wool's better. Mid layers, synthetic or wool. Outer layers, Gore-Tex or canvas.
Okay.
Something that can breathe, because you can remove that Gore-Tex and let this wool
Air
evaporate.
Yeah.
Remove that and let it evaporate.
Okay.
I've even got wool down to here.
I'm tracking.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's next? What else we got going?
Okay, so as far as gear, I have multiply redundant lighters. I'm great with friction fire. I think I'm good with it. I don't want to brag about myself.
Meaning like bow drill and things
bow
of that
drill,
sort.
hand drill, fire plow, saw. I'm good with that. But we're standing here in Quake and Aspen in high altitude Utah. What are you going to make it out of? You can make it out of Quake and Aspen. What a pain in the butt. And the majority of the clones that we're standing in right now are alive.
Yeah.
You're not going to get friction fire in this temperature with the green wood. Like anything, if you rub it together long enough, is going to catch on fire. But sometimes you have to push a semi down the side of a mountain to get that much friction, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's going to smoke me.
Yeah.
It can be done, but it's not reliable. You should always bring a lighter.
Well,
right?
and the thing to think about too is while you're doing that, the physical exertion of it.
Yeah, it's
you're
going to
be sweating.
warm you up.
You're going to be
It's
burning
make you
calories.
sweat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Calories will keep you warm, but if you burn them all up, that's a problem 3 days from now.
Sure.
So
Because that internal fire, like we talked about at the beginning.
that goes back to ability to replenish.
Yeah.
Right? So I have 3 lighters. If I break 1 or 2, I'm okay. Since it's the most important thing, I have 3. I have this wool vest that I wear constantly. Anytime I'm in the backcountry, I got this wool vest, so I just keep lighters in it. Right?
Oh,
So
you
in
got
there.
little pouches sewn on there and everything.
It's for
Cool.
shotgun shells.
Oh, there you go.
But
okay.
it holds a lighter just fine. And I
Basic-
normally have
just basic
little
lighters, yeah?
Yeah, just little lighters.
Yeah.
And I normally have a little chunk of rubber tire.
Like a
for-
little
for
tinder kind of
kindling.
thing? Yeah.
I just burned it up last time I was here.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a fail on my part, but we'll deal with it, right? And then whenever I go out, I also take this one. This one's waterproof, right? A little more water resistant. And that's just 3 lighters, right?
Right on.
So there's fire.
Yep.
Shelter I'm wearing, shelter I can create. Water is in the form of snow. Let's talk about snow real quick. Everybody thinks, you ever heard don't eat snow, it'll give you hypothermia? You ever heard anyone that actually happened to?
For sure.
No.
No.
It's because it doesn't happen, right?
Okay.
So the Tlingit Indians in Tlingit, Eskimo, Inuit, if you're in a snowy area with no rivers for 6 months, clearly they're not dying from hypothermia because they ate snow.
Yeah.
The problem with it is it's about 90% volume air. So I literally have to eat 9 times as much snow, like 9 gallons of snow will give me a gallon of water. That's a ridiculous pain in my butt, right?
Almost impossible.
So that's the equation for that, huh?
Well, ice is dense, snow's not.
Yeah.
Right? But the quick takeaway for water in winter is either find a stream, crack through that sucker and get the water out of there, or melt a lot of snow. Because everyone's like, I'll bring my water purifier. And what you going to do with that? You're going to put water in it, and tomorrow morning it's going to be broken because it froze and cracked the thing apart.
Yeah.
So you really have to boil,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
Which means we go back to fire.
Yeah.
Right? And the good thing is you can eat snow all day long. If you want to get they make these Nalgene bottles that are like it's the Nalgene lid, but it's a plastic bottle.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just stick some 550 cord on it. Right now we're warm.
Yeah.
Our body heat is enough to melt snow without giving us hypothermia. Just stick that puppy down in your armpit.
That's kind of what I was wondering. Yeah.
You start to feel cold, take it out. right?
Yeah,
just add snow to it and watch it melt.
Yeah.
And then there's a half a liter, a liter or two, and you need a gallon a day.
Yeah.
Right?
Especially at altitude. And
that, altitude and dry. So we're in an environment where it's so cold the water falls out of the air. Okay, if the water's falling out of the air, then we're 100% of what leaves our lungs is taking the 100% of the air or oxygen that leaves our lungs is taking all of the water with it. We're not in a humid environment where we're not really losing a lot of water because we breathe it back in. So the maximum amount of water we can lose, you will lose in winter. So you do need to drink a lot of water. The problem is you don't feel it either until you're way past the point of recovering, and you're just like, why am I so wrecked? Because you're dehydrated, but it feels different when you're cold.
Huh.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm tracking. Okay.
So where are we at? Base layers, water.
Fire. What do we got going in your little kit bag there?
Okay, fire, watch out. So I'll just tear this thing apart, right? So we've covered shelter, fire, water. Right here in the back, I've got food, right? That's some jerky. Because my metabolic fire, number one, is the most important fire to keep burning, right? So the best way to do that is high caloric, something with fat. Think a stick of butter, think lard, think peanut butter, think protein of some sort with water. Now protein takes a little more water to digest than carbohydrates, so if you do have protein like this, you're going to need to drink more water. It's just something fatty that can help you stay warm, right? The next
would you like actually eat butter?
Yeah, I would. I used to, but I'm allergic to dairy now.
Yeah.
But yeah, legitimately, you can eat a whole stick of butter and then go fell trees and do logging. Growing up in Idaho, we had a lumber mill, and we'd go out and do logging in the winter. My uncles, they would take a stick of butter. It's gross, but they'd be warmer than everybody else because their body's burning
that. Yeah.
Just burning it right up.
That's interesting.
So this bag,
what's that diet where all you do is eat fat?
Keto.
It's like keto before keto, huh?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, more or less.
Interesting.
Well, fat is just condensed, stored carbohydrates.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's condensed food. It makes sense. Just eat condensed food. Right? Okay. It doesn't have to specifically be fat. It manifests itself in different ways, but lard and fat is condensed food. Like sled dogs in Alaska and northern Canada, they literally give them blocks of lard.
Yeah.
That's all they eat. And they run on it like 20 hours a day.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so this actual pack has a headlamp because people fail all the time in the dark. You can use your phone, but if you're actually in a survival situation, right? Your phone's going to be that signal device. You might be able to hike to the top of a mountain and call for help.
Yeah.
So really, if you're in an area where you know you don't have coverage, turn the phone off.
Yeah.
Stick it in your pocket so it doesn't freeze, and try it again tomorrow.
Yep.
Which means you're going to want some sort of a headlamp. I've got this thing stays in this bag. It is a ferro rod fire maker.
Hell yeah, I got one of them. Feeling good about myself.
Jake, do you know how to use it though?
Yeah, I can make a spark.
Oh, okay.
I can make a spark with it.
So take a bunch. So let me add, there's a little more science on you. What are the components of a candle?
Wax.
Which is?
Fuck if I know.
Fat. And
so eat candles is the message.
No, but I like where you're going there.
I like your...
Unless it's a fat candle.
Just creative suggestions.
Then what's a wick? Cotton?
So yeah,
I have no idea.
It's fat in a wick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? So what about cotton and Vaseline? Fat in a wick. What about pocket lint in Carmex? Fat in a wick.
Okay.
What about fat wood from a tree with resin in it? Fat in a wick. It's all candle, right?
Sure.
If you put your lighter on the fat, it's not going to burn. You need the wick to condense the oils and gases so that they can actually ignite with the oxygen. So if you just throw in the back of your little container there a bunch of little pinches of fat in a wick, and you literally, I mean, pinch like the diameter of what's between your pointing finger and your thumb. That's all you need to make a fire, and I can put like 20 of them in there.
Show that to the camera.
Oh shit! Yeah. And that's just like what, like a little piece of lint or something?
It's cotton and Vaseline, petroleum jelly.
When I was in Scouts, our leader would get the lint from his dryer.
That's what I keep it in a little bag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that
that was okay when you were Scouts, but nowadays the majority of people's clothing are synthetic. So nowadays when you try to do that, it's all plastic, and all of that plastic just melts together in a little ball of like hard plastic.
Okay. Oh, shit. Okay, so the dryer lint thing a little bit.
Underwear, great. If you're washing your clothes, not so great, right?
You'd be like jeans and t-shirts, it'd be all right.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Because it's got to be it's got to be a plant-based material.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Or you can just buy a ball of cotton at the dollar store for like 50 cents and get some Vaseline and then load that puppy up.
And stuff, yeah.
Put a film canister, an old medical pouch, whatever.
Cool.
So I have fire, I have food, I have
light,
yep. And then I have communication, right? So this little thing is just a GPS. It's a Garmin Mini. I like it because it works with my phone and because I can send a text message. And if I go places all the time, right? And I'm taking people with me that can get hurt. So when I'm maybe by myself, I don't bring this as much, but when I bring other people with me, or I tell my wife, hey, I'm gonna go someplace crazy, we're gonna go to Escalante where we've had flash floods, or go up in the mountains where I've got avalanche problems, right? One text message, hey, this is where I started. She's got a GPS location of where I've started. And if she doesn't hear from me by 10 o'clock tonight, someone's going to come up here looking for me.
Sure.
So for this trip, I bought the wrist-mounted Garmin that the military uses a ton.
Yeah, I was going to bring one.
It's called a Foretrex. I got it in my bag, but it works with my phone too. Oh, and so when we left here the other day, I sent my wife, hey, this is where we're at. If you don't hear from me by 9 p.m. tonight, send fucking everyone.
And we talked about fire, water, shelter, food, communication.
Yep.
And the ability to replenish it. So how would we replenish this?
Solar.
A giant battery?
Yeah.
Or solar, right? So, and realistically, like, nothing is indefinite.
Sure.
Right? At least from a communication perspective. If I bring solar, it's indefinite until I break it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right? But there are some things that are going to wear out after a while. So one thing that I like to do, this little dude here, is called a Woobin light, right? And they make a bunch of different variations of that. It is just a flashlight, right? Nothing super special. But it's got a little recharging port right there. I can recharge both my cell phone and my little dude here, and these will last. Yeah. Like, I've had this thing running, and you don't need to run it the whole time unless you're tracking yourself. You turn it on, you turn it on at night, see if there's any text messages. If not, great. Send a message up that night and turn it off. You can run for a month or two if you're doing it that way, or I can run for about 5 days straight if it's just monitoring. Or about 2 or 3 days if it's tracking.
Yep.
So if I get 1 or 2 recharges, now I'm 2 or 3 months deep at the most. You know,
using the minimal amount.
Yeah, using the minimal amount. And I can do everything from the Garmin. Just the user interface from my cell phone is way easier to manipulate and deal with.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we've got fire, water, shelter, food, and communication already.
Yeah.
And replenishing.
And replenishing. Right. Now, if we want to go even deeper, I've got a little pistol in there, and that's a squirrel getter or something for food. We've got water all over the place. We just need to make fire, start drinking water, start boiling stuff, kill any animal that comes along, and we eat it.
Sounds awesome.
Too easy.
Let's do that.
I would say Bob's your uncle, but people don't get that anymore. So I say, boom, Bob's your mother's brother.
Well, let's do this. We'll go ahead and wrap this one up.
Yeah.
We're going to move on to shelter.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of a big, well, I mean, it's a big one. So
it's probably one of the biggest ones.
Yeah, so we're going to, me and Chris will look like buffoons, and Tyler will show us how to make a kind of a down and dirty shelter here.
The big problem with a lot of this stuff is you can go for weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like weeks, and just keep adding more pieces of information.
Yeah. Well,
very cool.
We're about to do the 1 hour shelter here. So
won't leave you hanging.
Cool.
Sorry.
We'll see you guys on part 2. See you soon.